Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I'm so glad you're here because today we're going to talk about a problem that so many English learners face every single day. Let me ask you a question. Why is it that so many people study English for years, sometimes 5 years, sometimes 10 years, sometimes even more? Yet when it comes to actually speaking, they feel stuck, nervous, and unable to find the words. Why is it that you can know hundreds, maybe even thousands of vocabulary words? You can read books, you can understand grammar rules, but when it's time to open your mouth, nothing comes out? Does this sound familiar to you? Have you ever had that frustrating experience where you wanted to say something in English, maybe in a classroom, maybe with a foreign friend, maybe in a meeting, but your brain just froze and the words wouldn't come? You probably thought to yourself, I've studied for years. Why can't I speak? Maybe I'm not talented enough. Maybe English is just too hard for me. And if you've ever felt this way, I want to tell you right now, you are not alone. In fact, millions of English learners around the world are in exactly the same situation. You are not broken. You are not bad at languages. You simply haven't been shown the right approach. This podcast episode is about breaking that cycle of frustration. It's about shining a light on the real reasons why you've been studying and studying, but still feel blocked when it comes to speaking. And most importantly, it's about giving you practical solutions that actually work, so you can finally begin to feel comfortable and confident when you speak English. Here's what we're going to cover today. First, I'm going to reveal to you the 3 biggest problems that stop people from speaking English fluently. These are the same problems I have seen again and again in the lives of thousands of students I've taught. Once you know these problems, everything will make more sense. Then, we're going to talk about 3 simple solutions, strategies that you can start using immediately, today, without waiting for a teacher, without waiting for the perfect conditions, without waiting for years of more study. And finally, if you stay with me until the end of this episode, I will share with you one extremely powerful daily habit. This is something so small, so simple, that it only takes 5 minutes a day. Yet it can completely transform your speaking ability if you do it consistently. I'm not exaggerating when I say this one habit can change everything for you. So here's the promise. By the end of this podcast, you will not only understand why you have struggled to speak English, but you will also walk away with the tools, the mindset, and the confidence to start changing that today. This is not just about learning English. This is about building the courage to open your mouth, to express yourself, and to connect with people around the world. Are you ready? Then let's dive in. Now that we've opened today's episode with that big question, let's take a closer look at the reality of English learners all around the world. I want you to really picture this, because what I'm about to describe might sound very familiar to you, or maybe it sounds like your best friend, or maybe it reminds you of classmates you've had. Imagine someone who starts learning English in middle school. From the very beginning, they learn the alphabet, they learn a few simple greetings, they memorize vocabulary lists of colors, fruits, days of the week, and classroom objects. As the years pass, they move on to more complicated grammar. They learn the past tense, the present perfect, conditionals, phrasal verbs. They spend hours and hours memorizing irregular verbs, go, went, gone, see, saw, seen, do, did, done. They practice by filling in the blanks on worksheets, repeating dialogues from textbooks, and sometimes even writing short essays. By the time they reach high school or university, this person has already spent maybe 5, 6, or even 10 years studying English in some form. Now, if you were to open up their notebook or check their test scores, you might think, wow, this person knows so much English. They can probably recognize thousands of words. They might be able to read articles in English, maybe even novels. They could probably pass written exams without too much trouble. And yet, the moment you ask them to actually open their mouth and have a real conversation, something strange happens. Their mind goes completely blank. The words that they know on paper seem to disappear in real life. They hesitate, they stutter, they switch back to their native language, or they just stay silent. This situation is not rare. It's actually the most common story I've seen in my entire career as a teacher. I have taught over 100,000 students from different countries, different backgrounds, and different levels of English. And I can tell you this with complete honesty. Almost all of them faced this problem at some point. It doesn't matter if they were doctors, engineers, teenagers in school, or business professionals. It doesn't matter if they studied English in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, or in Europe. The pattern is the same. People invest years of their lives studying English. They know so much in theory, but they can't speak when it matters. Let's pause here for a moment. Why is this important? Because many learners believe that they are alone in this struggle. They think, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe my brain just isn't made for languages. Maybe I'm too old to learn. Maybe I don't have the talent. If you've ever told yourself something like that, I want you to erase it from your mind right now. The truth is you are absolutely not alone, and there is nothing wrong with you. This is a global reality. From Japan to Brazil, from Egypt to Spain, from Korea to Angola, students tell me the same story. I can read, I can write, I can listen, but I can't speak. Now, why do I emphasize this so strongly? Because sometimes the biggest enemy in language learning is not grammar, not vocabulary, not even pronunciation. Sometimes the biggest enemy is the feeling of isolation, the belief that you are the only one failing. And when you feel like you're the only one, you start to lose hope. You start to believe you'll never get better. And eventually, you stop trying. But when you realize that millions of learners around the world face exactly the same challenge, it becomes easier to breathe. You can think to yourself, okay, this is not just me. This is a common problem. And if it's a common problem, then there must be a solution. Let me give you a few examples from my teaching experience. I once had a student from South Korea who had been studying English for nearly 15 years. She had the highest grades in her school, and she even majored in English literature at university. She had read Shakespeare in English. But when she came to her first class with me, she could barely introduce herself without pausing and apologizing. She was embarrassed, she was nervous, and she thought she had wasted all those years. But within a few months of focusing on the right methods, she was speaking naturally and confidently. What changed? Not her intelligence, not her vocabulary knowledge, but simply the way she practiced. Another student I remember vividly was a man from Brazil. He was a professional engineer, very smart, very successful in his career, and he had even traveled to the United States several times. Yet every time he was in a meeting with American colleagues, he would remain silent. He told me, I can write emails in English, I can understand the documents, but I just freeze when I try to speak.
This man had studied English for nearly 10 years before meeting me, and still, he felt like a beginner whenever he had to talk. Again, the problem was not his intelligence, it was the way he was practicing. These stories are not unique. I could tell you dozens more. Students from Mexico, Turkey, China, Angola, Italy. The same story repeating again and again. They all had the knowledge, but they didn't have the ability to use it in real conversations. And here's another important reality. The traditional school system is partly responsible for this situation. Think back to your own classes. How much time did you spend listening to your teacher explain grammar? How much time did you spend reading texts, filling in the blanks, and preparing for written exams? And now compare. How much time did you actually speak, practicing real conversations, making mistakes and learning from them? For most people, the answer is clear. They spent almost all of their time on passive activities and very little on active speaking. This is like going to the gym and watching other people lift weights without ever touching the weights yourself. You might understand how exercise works, but your muscles will never grow. This is why I say to my students, don't feel ashamed if you can't speak yet. Don't feel like you are behind. You have been trained in a system that focused too much on theory and too little on practice. It's not your fault, but now that you see the reality, you can start to change it. So let's summarize this block. The reality is that millions of learners around the world have studied English for years, sometimes more than a decade, and yet they still struggle to speak. They know thousands of words, they can pass exams, they can read books, but in real-life conversations, they freeze. This is common, it is normal, and it does not mean you are incapable. It simply means you have been focusing on the wrong areas, and with the right strategies, you can change this completely. This is the reality of English learners, and knowing this reality is important because now we are ready to dig deeper into the specific reasons why this happens. We're going to break it down into three main problems: the wall of fear, the enemy called perfection, and the swimming pool problem. Once you understand these, you will finally see that there is nothing mysterious about why you can't speak yet. And more importantly, you will be able to see exactly how to overcome each one.
Let's move now to the first and perhaps the most powerful obstacle that keeps English learners from speaking fluently: the wall of fear. Imagine this for a moment. You have studied English for years. You know the grammar rules. You can recognize thousands of words when you read them. You even understand a lot when you listen. But the moment someone looks at you and asks the simple question, like, "How are you today?" your brain seems to freeze. The words are somewhere inside. You know they are there, but they refuse to come out. It feels as if there is a thick, invisible wall standing between your brain and your mouth. That wall has a name: fear. Fear is one of the most underestimated forces in language learning. People often think the main problem is vocabulary or grammar or pronunciation. But I have seen many students who had more than enough vocabulary and excellent grammar, yet they still could not speak. Why? Because fear paralyzed them. It is that sudden rise of anxiety when all eyes are on you. Your heart begins to beat faster. Your hands may even tremble. You open your mouth to say something, but the words simply do not come. And then, to make it worse, you start thinking about what others are thinking about you. Will they laugh if I make a mistake? Will they think I am stupid if I say something wrong? Will they understand me, or will they just look at me confused? These questions grow louder and louder in your mind until they become almost unbearable. I remember experiencing this exact situation myself when I was learning a foreign language. I had been studying diligently. I had memorized vocabulary lists. I had practiced my grammar. And I felt confident while I was studying alone in my room. But then, the moment I was in front of the teacher and it was my turn to speak, my mind went completely blank. The classroom felt suddenly hot. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding inside my ears. The teacher was waiting. My classmates were waiting. And I just froze. I wanted to speak so badly. I knew the answer. I knew the words. But fear built that wall instantly, and nothing came out. That experience taught me something powerful. Fear is not a sign that you are weak or unintelligent. Fear is part of being human. We all fear being judged. We all fear being embarrassed. We all fear looking foolish. And language learning is the perfect environment to trigger those fears, because communication is so deeply connected to our identity. When we cannot express ourselves, it feels like we are losing a part of who we are, and that is terrifying. But here's the truth I want you to remember. Fear does not mean you are not capable. Fear does not mean you will never speak. Fear is simply a wall. And like every wall, it can be broken brick by brick. The first step to breaking this wall is to recognize it. Acknowledge that the fear exists. Do not try to pretend it is not there. Do not feel ashamed because you are afraid. Fear is normal. In fact, if you feel nervous before speaking, congratulations! You are just like millions of other learners all over the world.
The real problem begins when fear controls you. If you allow it to decide your actions, you will stay silent. And silence is the enemy of fluency. Fluency grows only when you speak. Speaking means taking risks. Speaking means making mistakes. Speaking means sometimes looking silly. But every time you push against that wall, it gets a little weaker. Every time you speak, even though you are afraid, you remove one more brick. And eventually, the wall begins to crumble. Think about this. A child learning their first language makes thousands of mistakes. They mispronounce words, they use grammar incorrectly, they say funny things that adults often correct. But does the child stop speaking because of fear? No. They continue because they are not afraid of looking foolish. That is why children learn so fast. Adults, on the other hand, are constantly worried about their image, about their pride, about how others will judge them. That is why adults build the wall of fear much higher than children ever do. I want to share another personal example. When I started practicing speaking with native speakers, I would prepare sentences in my head before saying them. I would think carefully, okay, I will say this exactly like this. But when the moment came, my plan collapsed. I made mistakes. People sometimes did not understand me, and yes, a few times they even laughed. Not in a cruel way, but in the way you laugh when someone says something unusual. And you know what? I survived. Nothing terrible happened. In fact, the more I survived these little embarrassments, the stronger I became. I discovered that fear was just a shadow. It looked big, but it could not actually hurt me. So here is the key message of this section. Fear is normal, but it can be broken.
The wall between your brain and your mouth is not permanent. It may feel solid, but it is not made of concrete. It is made of habits, of old memories, of imagined judgments, and all of those can be changed. Step by step, word by word, mistake by mistake, you will bring that wall down. Before we move to the next problem, I want you to reflect on this. Ask yourself, when was the last time fear stopped me from speaking English? What did it feel like in my body? Was my heart racing? Did I feel heat in my face? Did I avoid speaking because of it? If the answer is yes, do not feel bad. Smile instead, because you now understand what is happening. You are not broken. You are not hopeless. You are simply facing the wall of fear, and you have the power to break it.
When we talk about fear in language learning, many people imagine it as something external, something that suddenly appears in the moment of speaking, like an invisible hand that squeezes your throat. But in reality, fear is not an enemy waiting for you outside. Fear is part of you. It lives in your mind, in your body, in your memories of the past. It is the echo of every time you were corrected too harshly, every time you felt embarrassed for saying something wrong, every time you compared yourself to someone who seemed more fluent, more confident, more advanced than you. Fear is not proof of your weakness. It is proof that you are alive, that you care, and that you are stepping into something that matters to you. Nobody feels fear when doing something meaningless. The very fact that you feel nervous about speaking English shows that this language is valuable to you.
Now, let's pause for a moment. I want you to remember a specific time when you froze in a conversation. It could be in school, when a teacher asked you a question and your mind went completely blank. Maybe it was in front of colleagues at work when you wanted to contribute, but the words refused to come out. Or maybe it was at the airport, a simple situation like asking for directions or ordering food, and suddenly your heartbeat accelerated, your palms began to sweat, and your tongue felt heavy, like it was locked inside your mouth. Take a few seconds to recall that moment. Don't run away from it. Don't try to erase it. Just sit with it. You were there, you felt it, and guess what? You survived it. You were still here. That embarrassing, uncomfortable moment did not destroy you. It passed, and here you are, still on the journey of learning English. This is important. That frozen moment does not mean you cannot speak. It does not mean you are not capable. It only means you are human. All humans experience fear when they face something uncertain, something new, or something that exposes them to judgment. If you were a robot, programmed with perfect grammar and instant answers, you would never feel this. But you are not a robot, and thank God for that. You are a human being with emotions, with a heart, with a brain that sometimes protects you too much by creating that wall of fear. The wall is not your enemy. It is a signal. It says, this matters. This is important. Pay attention. Think about the first time a child tries to walk. They fall again and again. They hit the floor. They cry. They hesitate. But eventually, they stand up and take one step, then two, then three. Fear is there too, but it does not stop them. The child falls, cries, gets up, and tries again. Nobody says to the child, "You failed. You should never try to walk again." Instead, We cheer them on. We smile at every little attempt. We celebrate the courage, not just the result. That is exactly how you must treat yourself when speaking English. Every time you freeze, every time you hesitate, every time you make a mistake, that is not the end, it is only a fall. And like a child learning to walk, you get up again.
So let me encourage you right now. If you are afraid, if you have frozen in the past, if you still feel nervous before opening your mouth, that does not mean you are broken. That does not mean English is not for you. It simply means you are on the path of every real learner. Your fear is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of growth. Imagine you are standing in front of a wall. On the other side of that wall is the fluent, confident version of yourself. The wall looks solid, intimidating, impossible to climb. But if you look closely, you will notice it is not made of concrete. It is made of paper, of thin layers built by old experiences, by old voices that told you, don't make mistakes, don't embarrass yourself, stay quiet. And the moment you take a step, the moment you try, even with mistakes, you begin to tear holes in that paper wall. With every word spoken, with every conversation attempted, you weaken the wall until one day you realize it was never as strong as you thought. The first key to breaking down the wall of fear is acceptance. Accept that you will feel it. Don't waste your energy fighting the feeling or trying to eliminate it completely. Instead, use that energy to step forward despite the fear. Say to yourself, yes, I feel nervous, but I will speak anyway. This shift in attitude is powerful because fear loses its strength when you stop treating it as a signal to stop and begin treating it as a signal to move forward. The second key is perspective. Most of the time, our fear exaggerates reality. We think people are judging us, laughing at us, or waiting for us to make mistakes. But in truth, most people are simply listening, and many of them admire the fact that you are speaking in a language that is not your native one. When you see a foreigner trying to speak your language, what do you feel? Usually respect, not criticism. Remember that others feel the same about you. And finally, the third key is repetition. Fear loses power through exposure. The more you face it, the weaker it becomes. Think about public speakers, actors, or teachers. They all felt nervous in the beginning, but by repeating the act again and again, their body and brain learned that fear does not mean danger. The same will happen to you in English. Every time you practice, every time you open your mouth, you are training your brain to see speaking as safe, normal, and even enjoyable. So, the next time you freeze in a conversation, I want you to remember this. It is not a failure. It is not proof that you can't speak. It is only a step in the process. You are human. You are learning. And every moment of fear is an invitation to grow. Perfectionism. A word that sounds noble, almost like a compliment. But in the world of learning languages, it can be one of the most dangerous enemies. Today, I want to talk to you about this silent killer of progress, the enemy called perfection. If fear is the first wall that stands between your brain and your mouth, then perfectionism is like an invisible chain that keeps you from even trying to climb that wall. It whispers in your ear, saying, "Wait, you're not ready yet. Don't speak until it's perfect. Don't open your mouth until you can sound exactly like a native. And so time passes, opportunities pass, and the dream of fluency stays locked in the future, never becoming the present. Let me introduce you to Alex. Alex was one of my students years ago, and to this day he remains an unforgettable example of how perfectionism can stop even the most brilliant minds from progressing. Alex was extraordinary. He could memorize vocabulary lists faster than anyone else. He had an incredible memory and would often impress me by quoting entire passages from English books he had read. He was always the first to finish grammar exercises, always the one with the highest score on written tests. But when it came time to speak, Alex disappeared. His lips stayed closed, his eyes often went down to his notebook, and his voice seemed trapped inside his throat. When I asked him questions in class, he would hesitate, his mind racing, his body frozen. Later, in private, Alex confessed something to me. "Teacher, I know the answer. I know what to say. But the moment I try to speak, I start doubting myself. What if I use the wrong tense? What if I pronounce it badly? What if everyone thinks I sound stupid? So I just stay quiet." Does this sound familiar to you? Have you ever had the thought, better to stay silent than to make a mistake? If so, then you understand exactly what Alex was going through. His problem wasn't lack of knowledge. It wasn't lack of intelligence. It wasn't even lack of preparation. His real problem was perfectionism, the idea that unless his English was flawless, he shouldn't even try. And here's the truth I want to share with you. Language is not math. It is not about reaching a perfect answer with zero mistakes. Language is about connection, about meaning, about the ability to share your ideas, your emotions, and your personality with another human being. If you say, "Yesterday I go to the park," every native speaker will understand you. Is it grammatically wrong? Yes. Does it stop communication? No. The perfectionist inside of you screams that it's a disaster, but the listener in front of you is still nodding, still smiling, still following your story. Communication has happened, and that is the goal. Think about it this way. When a baby learns to walk, do parents get angry because the baby stumbles and falls? Of course not. They celebrate every tiny step, every clumsy movement, every wobble. They know that falling is part of learning. Yet when it comes to language, so many learners expect themselves to walk, run, and dance without ever stumbling. They punish themselves for every mistake, instead of celebrating the fact that they are moving, that they are progressing. Perfectionism creates a prison. It forces you to measure every word before you speak it, as if you were trying to balance water in your hands. And what happens? You lose the water. The moment is gone. The conversation is moved forward, and you stayed behind. Alex lived in that prison for years. He studied, he read, he filled notebooks with exercises, but he stayed silent. His English was beautiful on paper, but invisible in real life. The saddest part is that Alex believed he wasn't good enough. He thought silence was safer than mistakes. But silence is not safe. It is deadly. It kills your progress. It kills your confidence. And slowly, it kills your dream of fluency. You see, perfectionism doesn't just delay you. It convinces you that you are not capable, when in reality, you already have everything you need to speak. Here's something I often tell my students. If you wait for perfection, you will wait forever. Think about that. There is no perfect English. Even native speakers make mistakes. They forget words, they mispronounce names, they correct themselves mid-sentence. Language is alive, and living things are messy. Perfection is an illusion, and the longer you chase it, the further fluency runs away from you. So the key message of this block is this: don't let the enemy called perfection steal your voice. Remember Alex's story, not as a tragedy, but as a warning and a lesson. Don't stay silent because you fear a mistake. Don't overthink every word as if you're solving an equation. English is not about proving how smart you are. It's about being human, sharing yourself, connecting with another person. The next time you hesitate because you're not sure if your grammar is correct, I want you to do one thing. Speak anyway. Open your mouth. Let the words come out, even if they wobble, even if they stumble. Because every time you choose to speak, you break the power of perfectionism. You prove to yourself that mistakes are not the end of communication, they are the beginning of learning. In the next block, we are going to talk about how to break free from this perfectionist prison and finally give yourself the freedom to speak even when you are not perfect. Because remember, fluency is not perfection. Fluency is movement, fluency is progress, and fluency is courage.
Have you ever watched a baby learning to walk? It is one of the most powerful metaphors for learning any skill in life, especially a language. The baby does not sit in the corner thinking, maybe I should study the correct posture first. Maybe I should practice balance for 10 years before I even try. Maybe I should wait until I can walk perfectly. No, the baby simply stands up, takes a wobbly step, and then falls. Sometimes he falls hard. Sometimes she cries. Sometimes he looks around embarrassed, as if everyone saw the mistake. But what happens next is the most important part. The baby tries again, and again, and again, hundreds, even thousands of times. Every failed attempt is not wasted. Every fall is part of the learning process. And eventually, without even realizing how, the baby is walking. Not because he was perfect from the start, but because he was willing to be imperfect until progress became natural. Now, imagine if babies behaved like many language learners. Imagine a baby saying, "I will only walk when I am 100% sure I won't fall. I will only take my first step when I know it will be perfect." That baby would never walk. That baby would remain crawling forever. Sounds absurd, right? But this is exactly what so many learners of English do. They say to themselves, "I will only speak when I am sure the grammar is correct, when my accent is perfect, when the sentence is long and beautiful, when I sound like a native." And so, what happens? They stay silent. They never take the first step. And just like the baby who never dares to fall, they never learn to walk in the language. Here is the truth. Mistakes are not the enemy. Mistakes are the path. Every mistake you make is a sign that you are moving forward, that you are trying, that you are alive in the process of learning. When you avoid mistakes, when you avoid speaking, when you choose silence, you are avoiding the very road that leads to fluency. A baby accepts falling as part of walking. You must accept mistakes as part of speaking. Let me give you a practical example.
Imagine two students in an English classroom. The teacher asks them a simple question. What did you do yesterday? Student A stays silent. He's thinking, calculating, trying to build the perfect sentence in his head. He wants it to be long, grammatically correct, flawless. But in his mind, he gets stuck, overthinking every word. So, he says nothing. Student B, on the other hand, doesn't know how to make a perfect sentence, but he simply says, "Yesterday, I go park. I play football." No. Is this sentence grammatically perfect? No. The verb tense is wrong. A native speaker would say, "Yesterday, I went to the park and played football." But here is the difference. Student B communicated. Student B answered the question. Student B gave information. And most importantly, student B practiced. Student A, on the other hand, scored 0.
This is the scoring system of life and communication. Silence gives you 0 points, 0 progress, 0 experience, 0 connection. On the other hand, even an imperfect sentence gives you points. Maybe not 100 points, maybe not perfection, but at least 50 or 60 points. And in the game of learning, 60 points is infinitely better than 0. If you speak imperfectly, you are learning. You are trying. You are building confidence. If you stay silent, you are stuck. Think about it this way. Communication is not about perfection. It is about connection. The goal of language is not to win a grammar competition. The goal is to make someone understand you. If you achieve understanding, you have won. If you remain silent, even with perfect grammar in your head, you have lost. There is a phrase I want you to remember, a phrase that can change the way you learn and the way you live. Done is better than perfect. This means that an action, even if imperfect, is more valuable than an idea that never leaves your head. Speaking broken English is more valuable than staying silent with perfect English trapped in your mind. Writing a short, simple sentence is more valuable than dreaming about the perfect essay that you never write. Taking one step forward, even if small, even if shaky, is more valuable than planning forever without moving. When you apply this mindset, you begin to see progress everywhere. You stop waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect word, the perfect accent. You start speaking. You start practicing. You start engaging. And guess what? With time, your imperfect sentences become better. Your vocabulary grows. Your grammar improves. Your confidence increases. But none of that will ever happen if you wait for perfection first. Think again of the baby. The first steps are small, unbalanced, imperfect. But those steps are necessary. They are the foundation of walking. Later, walking becomes natural, automatic, easy. And later still, that same child who once fell 1,000 times may even run, jump, or dance. But it all began with small, clumsy, imperfect steps. The same will happen with your English. Today, you may feel clumsy. Today, you may feel like your sentences are broken. Today, you may feel embarrassed when people don't understand you. But if you keep moving, if you keep speaking, if you keep taking steps, one day your English will be natural, fluid, confident. And it all begins with embracing imperfection. So the next time you feel afraid to speak because you want it to be perfect, remember the baby. Remember the scoring system. Remember that silence is 0 points and imperfect communication is progress. And most of all, remember this phrase: done is better than perfect.
One of the most common frustrations among language learners is this. You can read articles, you can understand podcasts, you can watch entire movies in English without subtitles, and you might even follow complex lectures or YouTube videos. You absorb so much input that you feel proud of yourself, and you should. Input is important. It feeds your brain. It creates familiarity with the language. However, one day you are invited to join a simple conversation. Someone asks you, "So, what do you think about this?" And suddenly your mouth refuses to cooperate. The words are there in your head. You recognize them. You can even see the subtitles flashing in your imagination, but nothing comes out. That moment of silence is frustrating. You may even feel betrayed by your own brain, thinking, how can I understand everything but still not speak? This is what I call the swimming pool problem. Let me explain the metaphor. Imagine a man named Daniel who has always been fascinated by swimming. He never learned as a child, but as an adult, he decides that swimming is an essential skill, so he buys 10 books on the subject. He reads about different strokes, he studies the physics of floating, he memorizes breathing techniques, and he even watches countless videos of Olympic champions in slow motion. He feels confident. In fact, he can talk about swimming better than most people. If you ask him how to move his arms in freestyle, he can describe it in detail. If you ask him how to turn his head to breathe, he can even show you diagrams. But there is a small problem. Daniel has never touched the water. He has never stepped into a swimming pool. He has never actually felt what it is like to be surrounded by water. And on the day he finally goes to the pool, what happens? He panics. His body doesn't move the way he imagined. The water feels strange. He gulps. He flails. And despite all his knowledge, he feels like a complete beginner. His brain knows swimming, but his body doesn't. This is the same with English or with any language. Reading, listening, and studying rules are like reading books about swimming. They are useful, they give you important information, they prepare your mind, but they do not replace practice in the water. Speaking and writing are the actual swimming. They are the moments when your body and your brain must cooperate in real time. They require coordination, not just knowledge. You can know every single grammar rule, you can understand complicated vocabulary, but if you never train your tongue, your mouth, and your mind to work together, you will always struggle when it's time to speak. The problem is that many learners spend 95% of their time on input and almost no time on output. They listen, they read, they watch, but they don't speak. They don't write. They don't force themselves into the pool. And later, they wonder why their English is passive and not active. The answer is simple, because you trained one side of the brain but neglected the other. Input fills the tank, but output turns on the engine. Without output, all the fuel just sits there unused.
Think again about Daniel. He spent months studying swimming theory, but he could have learned faster by simply jumping into shallow water and practicing. The books would have been more useful after his first attempts in the pool, because then his body would have context. In the same way, your English books, your listening practice, and your movie nights will all be more powerful after you start speaking. When you practice speaking, you create a need. Suddenly, grammar rules stop being abstract. They become tools. Vocabulary stops being a list. It becomes something alive that you use to survive in conversation. This is why output must be part of your journey from the beginning.
Now let's reflect. Why are so many learners afraid to jump into the pool? Usually, it is fear of mistakes. They think, what if I sound stupid? What if my grammar is wrong? What if the other person doesn't understand me? But here's the reality. If you don't jump, you will never swim. The water will always look scary from the outside. At some point, you have to say, I know I will swallow water in the beginning. I know I will look clumsy, but this is the only way to learn. Language works the same way. You will forget words, you will make grammar mistakes, you will freeze sometimes. But each of those experiences is a stroke, a kick, a movement in the water. They are signs that you are swimming, not signs that you are failing. Think about it. A child doesn't learn to swim by memorizing theory. A child jumps, splashes, laughs, and sometimes cries. But with time, the body learns. The same is true for speaking English. Your brain and mouth need practice. Your muscles need training. If you only stay on the side of the pool, reading about swimming, you will never feel comfortable in the water. So, the swimming pool problem is really the input-output imbalance. Too much input without enough output creates the illusion of progress, but doesn't give you real ability. It's like being a swimming philosopher. You know everything in theory, but you drown in practice. To fix this, you need to deliberately practice speaking and writing. Record yourself talking about your day. Write a short message to a friend. Speak to yourself in the mirror. Join an online community. Every time you push yourself to output, you are stepping into the pool. And here's the secret. The more you swim, the more your input begins to transform into something powerful. Suddenly, the words you have read appear naturally in your speech. The expressions you heard in a movie become part of your vocabulary. The grammar structures you studied finally feel automatic. This transformation only happens inside the pool, not outside. So remember this, input is necessary, but it is not enough. Reading, listening, and watching will fill your brain with knowledge, but speaking and writing will give you the skill to use it. Don't be like Daniel, the man who read 10 books about swimming, but almost drowned on his first day. Be the learner who says, I might look clumsy today, but I will swim tomorrow. Because once you jump in the pool and start moving, you realize that the water is not as scary as you imagined. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes, until one day you are not just surviving, you are swimming gracefully, enjoying the water, free from fear. That is the swimming pool problem. Knowledge in the brain does not equal speaking ability. Only practice transforms information into action. And the sooner you recognize this truth, the faster your English will stop being theoretical and start being alive.
Now that we have explored the common problems that English learners face and identified some of the mental blocks that keep people silent, frustrated, or stuck, let's move into practical territory. Theory is important. Stories are inspiring. But at the end of the day, what really makes the difference in your English journey are the small, consistent actions that you take daily. That's where practical solutions come in. In this block, I want to give you 3 clear strategies that you can start using right away, today, even within the next hour. They are simple, realistic, and proven. They don't require you to buy expensive courses, move to another country, or wait for the perfect moment. These solutions are about using what you already have in your environment, your phone, your brain, and your determination. And if you put them into practice, you will start noticing real changes in how confident you feel when speaking English. Solution 1. Talk to yourself. Yes, you heard me right. Talk to yourself.
It might sound strange at first, but it is one of the most powerful and accessible techniques to practice speaking without needing anyone else around. Why? Because it removes the barrier of fear. When you talk to yourself, there is no judgment, no teacher correcting you, no friends laughing at your mistakes. It's just you and your own voice. And that space of safety allows you to experiment, to play with words, and to practice expressing yourself. You can do this in several ways. The simplest is describing your surroundings. Imagine you are sitting in your living room. You can say out loud, "I am sitting on the couch. The window is open. I can hear the cars outside. I feel a little tired, but also excited to record this podcast." That might sound like nothing special, but in reality, you are training your brain to make connections between thoughts and English words automatically. You are forcing your brain to express the present moment in a foreign language, and that is a powerful mental workout. Another method is to narrate your daily actions. While cooking, you can say, "I am chopping the onions. Now I am adding salt. The water is boiling." It's like you are giving a live commentary of your own life. It may feel silly, but over time, this practice builds fluency because you're constantly activating vocabulary in real contexts. And a third method is practicing thinking in English. Even if you don't speak out loud, you can switch your inner voice to English. Instead of thinking, "I need to send this email later," say it to yourself in English. "I need to send this email later." That shift from translation to direct thinking is one of the milestones of fluency. Solution 2. Find a language partner. While talking to yourself is a fantastic starting point, eventually you need to test your English in interaction with another human being. That's where a language partner comes in. A language partner is not necessarily a teacher. It can be a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger you meet online. Thanks to modern technology, there are countless apps and websites that connect learners worldwide. You can find someone in Japan who wants to practice English, or a person in Brazil who wants to exchange Portuguese for English, or even a native speaker in the UK who enjoys meeting new people and sharing cultures. The secret here is to treat it as a habit, not a random event. Don't just talk once and disappear. Instead, set up weekly sessions, like every Tuesday evening or Saturday morning. That regularity creates accountability. You know you have to show up, and that pressure motivates you to prepare, to think of topics, and to keep improving. A great formula for these sessions is the 50-50 time split. Spend half the time speaking your native language, helping your partner, and half the time speaking English, focusing on your improvement. This way, both of you benefit, and the balance keeps the exchange fair. Over time, this partner becomes more than just a language helper. They can become a friend, a source of encouragement, and even someone who celebrates your progress with you. And remember, you don't need perfect grammar to have a great conversation. You just need willingness, consistency, and a bit of courage to start.
Solution 3. Use English in the real world. At some point, you have to step outside of practice mode and into the real world. This is the scariest step, but also the most rewarding. The good news is that you don't have to start big. You don't need to give a presentation in English tomorrow or debate politics with a native speaker. Start small. The next time you go to a coffee shop that has English on the menu, try ordering in English. "Can I have a cappuccino, please?" If you are traveling and need directions, ask in English, even if you know the local language. If you are online and writing a comment on a YouTube video, write it in English. These are small wins. They might seem insignificant, but they accumulate. Each time you successfully use English in the real world, you give yourself evidence that you can do it. And that evidence builds confidence. You begin to trust yourself more. And the more you trust yourself, the less afraid you are to open your mouth next time. Celebrate these small wins. Even if you made mistakes while ordering that coffee, celebrate the fact that you tried. Confidence doesn't come from perfection. It comes from action. Every small action is a victory, and victories create momentum. When you combine these three solutions, talking to yourself in English, finding a language partner, and using English in the real world, you're building a cycle of practice. Self-practice develops fluency in private, a partner helps you test it in a safe space, and real-world use pushes you to apply it under real conditions. This cycle ensures that you are always improving, always challenging yourself, and always moving forward. To summarize, the practical path to English fluency is not about waiting until you feel ready, not about memorizing thousands of words before you dare to speak, and not about hiding behind silence. It is about starting where you are, with what you have, and doing small but consistent actions every day. So the challenge I leave you with today is this. Within the next 24 hours, choose one of these solutions and put it into practice. Talk to yourself for 5 minutes. Send a message to find a partner online. Or use English in a real-world situation, no matter how small. That single action could be the beginning of a habit that transforms your English forever. Because fluency isn't built in theory, it's built in practice. When we began this journey together in the introduction, I made you a promise. I told you that by the end of this episode, you would walk away not only with clarity about the problems that hold you back in English, but also with a simple, practical, and powerful solution that you could begin today. And now, here we are. We've discussed the myths, the fears, the perfectionism, the traps of endless input without output. We've seen why so many learners stay stuck for years, sometimes even decades, without ever truly finding their voice. But today, right now, I want to give you the key that unlocks everything we've been building toward. And the key is this. Talk to yourself in English every single day for just 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes. No textbooks, no classrooms, no pressure. Just you and your own voice.
Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Talk to myself? Isn't that strange? Isn't that silly? How can that possibly help? Let me reassure you, what may sound unusual at first is actually one of the most effective and scientifically sound methods for language learning. Think about it. Children, when they learn their first language, spend countless hours babbling, mumbling, repeating sounds, imitating the voices around them, and eventually forming words and sentences. They are, in a very real sense, talking to themselves before they ever talk fluently with others. And no one tells a baby, "Oh, you're wasting your time. You shouldn't talk unless someone is listening." Of course not. That private practice, that safe rehearsal, is what builds the foundation for everything that comes later. Talking to yourself removes the single biggest barrier to speaking: fear. When you're alone, nobody is judging you. Nobody is correcting your grammar, nobody is laughing at your mistakes, and nobody is waiting impatiently for you to finish your thought. You are free, free to experiment, free to stumble, free to repeat yourself 10 times until the word feels natural in your mouth. And that freedom is priceless. Fear is what keeps most learners silent in classrooms, in conversations, in meetings. But when you eliminate fear, your brain suddenly has space to practice in peace. And once you practice in peace, you gain confidence. Then, when the real conversation comes, you no longer freeze. The second reason this works is because it removes the toxic weight of perfection. In a classroom or even in conversation with a partner, you might feel the need to get it right. You want to use the right tense, the right word, the right pronunciation. That pressure can paralyze you. But when you're alone, speaking only to yourself, the perfection trap disappears. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not trying to get a grade. You're simply exercising your speaking muscles, much like going to the gym. And at the gym, no one expects you to lift perfectly the first time. You improve with repetition. Language works the same way. You don't need perfection, you need practice. And that brings us to the third reason why this method is so powerful. It builds what I like to call muscle memory for English sounds. Every language has its own rhythm, its own melody, its own physical requirements for the tongue, lips, and throat. If you only read and listen, but never actually speak, those muscles never get trained. It's like reading 10 books on swimming without ever stepping into the pool. Your brain might know what to do, but your body does not. By talking to yourself every day, you are literally training the physical system of your body to produce English naturally, without hesitation. Over time, words begin to flow automatically because your mouth already knows the movements. That's fluency. Not thinking too hard about each word, but allowing the sounds to emerge smoothly, like music. So how do you do it? It's simpler than you think. Every day, choose a moment when you're alone. Maybe in the shower, maybe while cooking, maybe while walking to work. For 5 minutes, narrate your life in English. Talk about what you're doing. I am cutting vegetables. I am boiling water. I am feeling tired but happy today. Describe your surroundings. The sun is bright, the air is cool, the street is quiet. Express your thoughts. I should call my friend. I'm excited about tomorrow. I wonder what will happen this weekend. It doesn't matter if your sentences are short or if your grammar is imperfect. What matters is that you are practicing the act of speaking.
At first, it may feel awkward. You may even laugh at yourself. But I want you to push through that initial discomfort. Remember, the baby learning to walk falls again and again. But each step, no matter how clumsy, brings them closer to confidence. After a week, it will already feel more natural. After a month, you'll be surprised at how quickly words come to your tongue. And after 6 months, you will look back and realize, I am no longer afraid to speak. I can express myself without freezing. That is the reward of daily self-talk. To make this more powerful, I want to challenge you. For the next 7 days, commit to 5 minutes of speaking to yourself in English every single day. 7 days. That's it. No excuses, no skipping. Choose your moment, set a timer if you need to, and just speak. After 7 days, notice how you feel. Do you feel a little lighter, a little more confident, a little more comfortable with your own voice? I believe you will. And that small change is the seed of a much greater transformation. So, let's return once again to the promise I made at the start. I promised you a method that works, a method you could start today without a teacher, without a classroom, without fear. This is it. Talking to yourself for 5 minutes a day. It sounds small. It sounds almost too simple, but it is powerful. It is life-changing because it removes fear, removes perfection, and builds the muscle memory you need for fluency. Done consistently, it will transform not just your English, but your confidence, your career, your opportunities, your life. So, Don't wait. Don't overthink. Don't say, I'll start tomorrow. Start today. Right now, after this episode, take 5 minutes and talk to yourself in English. The journey to fluency begins not with a book, not with a teacher, not with a perfect plan. It begins with you, your voice, and 5 minutes of courage. Try it, commit to it, and watch how your English begins to change one day at a time. Now that we've traveled together through this entire journey, it's time to bring everything full circle. Let's step back for a moment and remember what we set out to do at the beginning of this episode. At the start, I promised you that by the end of our time together, you would not only see the real reasons why you've been struggling with fluency, but also walk away with simple, practical tools that you can use every single day to finally make progress. We broke down the invisible barriers that stop millions of learners. And now, as we close, I want to remind you that fluency is not some faraway dream. It is something you can start building today, right now, with simple actions that are small but powerful. Let's revisit the 3 main problems that keep learners stuck. Problem number 1, fear. Fear of mistakes, fear of judgment, fear of opening your mouth and not sounding perfect. This fear is natural, and it happens to everyone. But as we discussed, fear cannot be the driver of your learning journey. If you let fear control you, your English will always stay locked inside your head. We saw that making mistakes is not a sign of weakness. It's actually the path to strength. Every error is evidence that you are practicing. Every awkward sentence is proof that you are growing. Fear only has power if you let it sit in the driver's seat. But if you can see it for what it is, just a small obstacle, not a wall, you can keep moving forward.
Problem number 2, perfectionism. This invisible enemy is even trickier than fear because it often hides behind good intentions. You want to speak correctly. You want to use the right words. You want to sound intelligent. That's normal. But the trap is believing that you must speak perfectly before you are allowed to speak at all. This is the great illusion of perfectionism. It tricks learners into silence, and silence is the opposite of progress. We reminded ourselves that fluency is not about being perfect. It's about communication. It's about being able to connect, to express, to share your ideas, even if your grammar is not perfect, even if your accent is strong. Fluency means flow, not flawlessness. And when you let go of perfectionism, suddenly speaking becomes easier, lighter, and much more natural. Problem number 3, the input trap. This is where so many learners spend years reading, listening, and watching, but they never balance it with output. They know thousands of words in theory, but they struggle to form simple sentences in practice. It's like the story we explored of the man who read 10 books about swimming but never entered the water. Knowledge is wonderful, but knowledge without use is like potential energy that is never released. Output, speaking and writing, is the bridge that transforms what you know into what you can do. Without it, you remain a collector of English, not a communicator, and your dream of fluency will always feel distant. But the good news is that for every problem, there is a solution. We talked about 3 solutions that can change everything when you apply them consistently. Solution 1, talk to yourself. Describe your day. Narrate your actions. Think out loud in English. This is the simplest, most private, and most powerful tool you have, because you can do it anywhere, anytime, and nobody is judging you. Solution 2, find a partner. Whether through an app, a website, or a friend, having a real human being to practice with multiplies your progress. Even 15 minutes a week can create momentum and motivation that pushes you forward. Solution 3. Use English in the real world. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Start small. Order a coffee. Ask a question. Write a short comment online. Every real-world interaction is a victory, and every victory builds confidence.
And this leads us to the heart of today's message. The most powerful tool, the secret ingredient, the one habit that can transform your English is small, daily action. Remember the promise from the introduction. Your fluency doesn't start tomorrow. It doesn't begin someday in the future when you feel ready or when your grammar is perfect. It begins today, right now. It begins with something as simple as talking to yourself for 5 minutes a day. That habit is the spark that lights the fire of fluency. It is private, safe, and consistent. There is no fear, no pressure, no perfection requirement. Just you, your voice, and your growing ability to express yourself in English. So here is my challenge to you. Try it for the next 7 days. Every day, set aside 5 minutes. Talk to yourself in English about your morning routine, your goals, your plans, or even the things you see around you. Don't worry about mistakes. Don't worry about vocabulary. Just speak. At the end of 1 week, you will notice something amazing. English words will start to come out more naturally. Sentences will begin to flow with less effort. Your brain will start building that muscle memory for English sounds. And that, my friend, is the beginning of real fluency. Now, as we close, I want to leave you with encouragement. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not bad at languages. You are simply on the journey, and every step you take counts. The fact that you are listening to this podcast right now is already proof that you are serious about improving. You are already investing time, energy, and focus into becoming a better communicator. And that means you are closer to fluency than you think. So don't wait. Don't postpone your dream. Don't fall into the trap of saying, "One day I'll be fluent." That day will only arrive if you act today. Fluency doesn't start tomorrow. It starts now, with small daily actions, with mistakes that you transform into lessons, with courage that grows every time you open your mouth. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you walk away feeling not only informed, but also inspired. And remember, English is not just about grammar or vocabulary. It is about connection. It is about expressing yourself, building bridges, and opening doors to opportunities. And you already have everything you need to begin. So keep practicing, keep speaking, keep moving forward. Thanks again for joining me. And remember this final line: keep going and keep growing.